I don't know if you recall, before the invasion in Afghanistan, there's a famous scene in Kandahar of the Taliban hanging a whole bunch of what they called agents, and it's in a soccer stadium. And this was broadcast worldwide. One of the really amazing things was, as I got there, we actually found the widow, and one of them was an agent of ours, someone who worked for the agency. We found the widow, and I kind of made it my priority to give her what, kind of the death benefit, the payments that we will give. When an agent is killed in the line of duty, a foreigner, we will always take care of the family. That's just something that the agency does, and that's, it's one of the, again, we talked about the relationships before, between the agent and the case officer or the organization. So I tracked her down, and this wasn't a kind of a sexy operation. It wasn't written about anywhere, but I got some money that the agent was owed, and I went into some dingy little, mud hut in Kandahar city. I couldn't talk to the wife directly because it was, Afghanistan, such a traditional culture, and so it literally was like a curtain hanging between us, and she of course is fully covered. And I made some kind of silly speech, which I thought was kind of very, very relevant, about his sacrifice, because it was all over every media outlet in the entire planet. This person had been executed, and we gave the payment, and that was something that was really important. Now, how this ends, who knows? Did she ever get this? She probably had a whole bunch of male relatives who stole the money, but it was just, it was night after night of just doing these things, and I just having, feeling that, what an opportunity this was, that I was honored to be able to do this kind of stuff. And again, different time of Afghanistan. This was only months after 9/11. We were eager to kind of track down those responsible. So
where were you? Had you gone overseas prior? I know you earlier. You said you were in New York. But had you gone overseas
that,
prior?
I had done. I got to be careful saying this. I had my wife was in the business as well. She was on her first tour in a country in the Levant in the Middle East, and I went to learn Arabic.
Okay.
So I actually took that time. It's we do one of the things the agency does really well is these tandem assignments. So if the two officers are married, they'll try to get people both jobs, and so she had a great job there, and I needed to learn Arabic, so I did my time there.
Reason I'm asking is when I worked there and I assisted you guys with a lot of operations, it was always kind of talk around the outfit that I was in is you guys are coming from working in permissive environments, then you show up to just a straight war zone, Kandahar and O2, and your guys' adaptability is phenomenal. But a lot of times you show up and you'll be like, well, you might not want to go out there, by yourself, and you might want to carry a little extra stuff. And
no, you're right.
And but I was just wondering, what is that? Because that's just a completely different world to go from, just Moscow
Shawn,
to Kandahar, Afghanistan.
There are those who can to make that transition, and those who can't. I'll never forget when I left there. So I followed a case officer who had been in special forces, and he was certainly more, in terms of his background was more conducive to being where he was. But then I showed up and I spoke Arabic, and I was comfortable in that environment. So I offered. He had some things that he offered, then I had some things that I offered. I remember when I left, the officer coming in shouldn't have been there, and sometimes you see that, but. But what's interesting, why this matters, is the management in the base or the station. And so, so for example, if when I was, because I did both, I ran stations in permissive environments, and I ran, a base in a paramilitary environment. It was in Eastern Afghanistan. We got rocketed every day for the entire year. It was insane. So someone who didn't have military experience or hadn't been in that kind of environment before, I would say, okay, here you are, and you're going to go do your agent meetings. You're going to have your security personnel, like yourself, Shawn. Ordinarily, we tell case officers, you make all the decisions. When it comes to that op and safety, you're going to listen to someone else today. So if we got shooters with us, they're going to be the ones. Just rely on them. At the same time, sometimes I would get officers who came from a war zone, had a spectacular career to a permissive environment, and they're like, hey man, I did a tour. And I'm like, well, sort of. Because what you did do is you served your country for a year in a really shitty place and risked your life, But you know what? You never ran a surveillance detection route because, Shawn, you guys ran it for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, so you got to be able to adapt, and the case officer has to have some humility. One of the things I worked really well with your old outfit, because number one, I respected what you all brought to the table in a tremendous fashion, but it was also, I was like, okay, if the hair starts going up in the back of your neck, get us out of this. I'm not going to question that. I might have an agent meeting. This agent might have information we desperately need, but Shawn, if you come to me and said, Mark, we got to get out of here, we're getting out of here. And you just kind of have that kind of back and forth with your security folks, and to me that was always because you got to have some humility. I don't know certain things, parts of what are required on the security side, and perhaps you all don't know what's required for the agent handling as much, but you kind of have that kind of mind meld together, and it can work. It doesn't always. There's some tension sometimes.
Yeah.
And I would have to talk sometimes to the security personnel or to our case officers, saying just get your shit together. We all got to work together. But at the end of the day, when you run operations, there's a fallback, which means if you got to get off the X, get off the X.
Yeah.
And because there's no, you can't bullets gonna come at you, and you can't turn that around.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I think after some terrible instances in the war zones where we lost people, I think people got smarter.
Yeah. How many deployments did you do in war zones?
So I did. I got to be careful on saying this. So it was probably almost 3 years altogether, off and on. But it was a solid year. 2011 to 2012, I was chief in Eastern Afghanistan in Paktika province. And then before that, it was my time in Afghanistan, then half a year in Iraq, and then some other places I can't always talk about. But it was enough where I became really comfortable in that environment. And it's important for a couple reasons. I'm not former military, so I was very cognizant of that. And so if I was a base chief in a paramilitary base, I would have someone from our special activities center as a kind of the chief paramilitary advisor, and I would have some security folks from your old outfit there as well, and maybe some other folks too. And so, man, it's a team effort. And so if we're taking incoming rocket fire, and we have the ability and the authority to return fire, I'm going to rely on people who know how to do that. So I might give the final okay, or I might just say, don't even ask me. We have the point of origin site. We're getting shot at by Al Qaeda across the border in Pakistan. Return fire with our mortars. I'm good with that. And you kind of but so what you know.
Yeah.
And so it was. But I became really comfortable in those environments, and that's what I was kind of known for. And I think that not everyone can do that. But it's just it's a place where I thrive, because I also brought that kind of the operational side of things. So again, I was a good recruiter. I mean, I was also singularly focused. I think that I remember when I got to Afghanistan, even much later on, 2011 and 2012, and for a variety of reasons, I really was super aggressive. This is coming off a kind of the terrible tragedy what happened in one of our sister bases in Coast in December 30th, 2009. So a lot of us wanted a lot of, vengeance is the wrong word. We're not really supposed to, taking vengeance out on our enemies. It's a very kind of calculated process in how we go after high value targets. I mean, it's got to be based on kind of continuing ongoing threats to U.S. personnel. But the idea of killing Al Qaeda members or collecting intelligence to do so. And I'll tell, the proudest story I had in a war zone was from my time in 2011. I got to the base. I'll never forget flying in. It was I was replacing a great friend of mine, ironically, who I'd been up in northern Iraq with in 2002. His name is Mick Mulroy. He's out now and he talks. He's a former Ground Branch officer in Special Activities Center. Then he went on to be a station chief in Africa. Super great friend of mine. Again, we'd spent months together in Iraq. And I'm flying into Afghanistan. And if you recall, our kind of helo infills are always at night. And we're flying in, and this base took incoming 107 millimeter rocket fire, constantly. And so we're hovering until kind of the IDF finished, and we go down there, and security folks, someone pick me up, and we can get to a kind of the hardened shelter, the base. And I'm there for a year. This is my base, and I'm like, what the fuck have I got myself into? which is it's the right attitude.
Yeah.
And Mick's there with a big smile on his face. He's like, hey man, welcome. And he couldn't wait to get out of there too. So we do a quick turnover, and he's on the bird, and he's gone. But one of the things about that particular location is a couple years earlier, 2 CI officers had been killed from our special activities center, and we knew who did it. And so, there's a lot of things you can do. So we're there trying to win hearts and minds. We have all of our kind of humanitarian projects, and we also have the HVT mission. And I gathered everyone in the base, and I said, if we do anything in this next year, we're gonna kill the dude who's responsible for the death of 2 of our colleagues, and we did.
You did.
Yep. And the night where a Hellfire missile, ended the life of a really bad guy, because it's not only responsible for killing 2 of our officers, but he was plotting additional attacks and was responsible for additional attacks against American forces, and that's really important too. But that night, sitting around the fire pit, which is, as you remember, it's caveman TV. The single greatest moments I've had in war zones are places like that. The camaraderie, if you ask me what do I miss about CIA, it's not the bureaucracy. There's a whole bunch of bad shit that happened to me in the end, but it's that camaraderie around the fire pit in a war zone. But one of the guys with me there was like, "Hey man, I have the phone number back in Fort Bragg of the widow of one of these officers. We should call her." That's fucking unheard of.
Wow.
And I said, "Fuck it, get the sat phone," and we called her, and we said, "We avenged the death of your husband," and she just said, "Thank you."
Holy shit.
No cable,
amazing.
and I just and that to me, we sat around, had a toast of bourbon, and that was relatively early on in my year, but I was like, that was good, man.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.